Hey everyone. So just this week, I finished setting up kind of an internal sandbox for the team here at Synapse Software. It's where we're going to be playing around with Cherwell while it is still pre end of life, and also Cortex. So this it will be kind of a playground that we'll use internally um, to build some things out in Cherwell and show what they look like in Cortex. This is for a couple different reasons. One, we get questions often about specific configurations in your data, your content, and we want to make sure that Cortex is ready to handle them. We're still, you know, extremely confident that Cortex, even as it stands right now, with the new 1.3 release, is capable of handling basically anything you could throw at it. Um, but we don't want to just throw it out there and see what happens. If you have a particular configuration that you want us to test, let us know. We'll set it up, and we'll try it out. We'll just give it one extra pass, make sure that Cortex can handle it. This is how we've fixed some issues with 10.1. Cortex had some issues with 10.1 content. That's since been fixed, so Cortex 1.3 officially supports and has been tested on 10.1.2 and above at this point. Um, and yeah, so in this video, I want to walk you through kind of some of the things that I went through while I was setting up this environment, uh, and show some things that you might run into as you're setting things up. And this is just another layer in showing that you don't need to make any changes to your Cherwell database in order for Cortex to work, because we are literally running Cortex on the same database that we're running Cherwell on. Now, for your cases, I don't necessarily recommend running Cortex on the exact same database that Cherwell is talking to, um, especially if you're hosted. Obviously, that's not an option. But if you're on premises, I definitely recommend making a backup of your data, standing that up on its own SQL server, and using that for Cortex. Um, A, it's a snapshot, and B, long term, that's probably how you're going to have it set up anyway. But there's nothing stopping you from testing out Cortex on the live data right now. Cortex only needs read-only access to the SQL data, so there's nothing stopping you from just creating a new SQL user that only has read-only access and using that for Cortex. We're certainly happy to help you set that up if that's something you want to do. And then, as you phase out Cherwell, you just stop running the Cherwell bits, and Cortex continues to run, and you don't have to do anything with the SQL server. So that is an option. But I will note that what I'm doing here is probably not exactly how you're going to be running Cortex. We do it, A, because it helps us build Cortex better, and B, kind of to make a point. Um, and before I get to the demo, I should remember to mention the user group. So every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Pacific time, I host the Cortex users group. It's a Zoom call. It's an hour long, but you can come and go as you please. You can stay as long as you want. You can come at the beginning, come halfway through, whatever, as you have time. And it's time that I set aside for you to ask me questions about how Cortex might work in your environment, uh, things that are coming up on the roadmap. And you can even ask other people who are using Cortex or thinking about using Cortex, some of the things that are going through their minds, or if they've encountered, specific scenarios. Um, it's really modeled after kind of the user group and community model that Cherwell had going, several years ago. Um, and it's my way of trying to grow that community back up, because that's really important to what we're doing here, and where we want to take Cortex. Um, so now that it's 5 minutes in, let's finally get to a demo. All right, so I'm in Cherwell. I'm going to start in Cherwell. to show you kind of how I set up security. Obviously, Cherwell supports a few different ways that you can log in. Um, Internal authentication, which obviously Cortex does not have. Cortex doesn't have its own way of handling usernames and passwords. The main reason for that is because I want to use as much of the Cherwell database as possible, but I can't use the encrypted or not encrypted hashed passwords in Cherwell because, quite honestly, I don't know how they hash them. So that doesn't really do me much good. Especially, reason number three, I have to be able to work with only having read-only access to the database. So sure, I could create my own hash of a password, but I need somewhere to store it. In some upcoming versions of Cortex, there will be optional support for kind of extending Cortex in certain ways that will require um, write access to something. Um, I have a couple ideas of how I might do that um, safely so that I can, it's your data still can stay read only, and anything that Cortex needs to write can be safely segmented off in its own little world. If you have particular constraints around that or opinions, definitely let us know. There's links down in the description to schedule some time with me. Um, Otherwise, I'm going to pick something that makes sense to me and probably will work for at least 80 to 90% of you all. Um, and hopefully I guess correctly. We could always evolve, if there's a situation that, your particular security team says, no, we can't do that, or, compliance or legal or whatever. But anyway, enough talk about internal authentication that we don't support. I don't do LDAP and I don't do Windows. Um, there are reasons for that, but mainly on the Windows side. LDAP, I suppose I could, but I don't right now. Um, so SAML, I do support, and I also support OpenID Connect. I went with SAML here for a couple different reasons. One, it's probably how a lot of you are set up, especially if you're hosted, you're probably using SAML. You're probably not using LDAP. You're probably not using Windows. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm guessing that the vast majority of you are using SAML. So I wanted to set up my Cherwell instance the exact same way. Now, my domain is hosted with Google. And Google support for SAML is kind of weird. So instead of just going directly to Google for the SAML configuration, I actually have something set up in Keycloak, the Synapse software internal realm. Keycloak, you've probably seen in a couple other videos. I think I've actually shown it. But I created what in Keycloak is called a realm, which is basically all the configuration that goes around users, groups, and clients. So clients being like Cherwell. So if I go over to clients, you'll see when it loads, I have this guy right here, which it has to be named, or the client ID has to be the URL for SAML reasons, but you can see it is a SAML client, and I just uh, give it a name slash description of the Cherwell version that I'm running. I think I could drill into here um, and show that I had to configure some of these things just because SAML is kind of its own little magic sort of thing, right? If you set up SAML, you know SAML has some magical features. Um, but this was all stuff that I'm pretty sure I had to manually enter a bunch of this stuff. I don't think I was able to use the Cherwell um, metadata that it exports. Um, it took me too long to get this set up and working with Cherwell, but I ended up getting it working with Cherwell, and uh, now I'm able to log in with it. I was able to use the IDP metadata. So in Keycloak, it's just over here. So this is the IDP metadata. You can download that and use it with Cherwell. And just to prove that I'm able to log in, let's just close out of the app, and let's just go to my desktop. There we go. So you can see I downloaded a bunch of stuff as part of this process. Anytime I'm dealing with SAML, my desktop ends up getting littered. All right, so let's log in. And we get the SAML prompt, and it redirects first to Keycloak, but because I have Keycloak set up to actually authenticate with Google, I'm going to select that. It redirects, and ta-da! Apparently I have a license that's about to expire, so good to know. And I'm logged in. All right. So one thing to note here, if we go over to users, you'll see my user that I just logged in as. There's something super magical going on with this. I'm not exactly sure how it just kind of sort of works, but initially I had login ID as just bparks, and I think it was able to pick up the email address from my SAML configuration and use that to log in. So again, SAML's kind of magical. I'm not going to worry too much about it because you're already using Cherwell. And if you're using it with SAML, hey, your SAML configuration already works. So that's awesome. The one thing to note here, however, is that I did change the login ID to the email address because the way I have Keycloak set up, when I use the OpenID Connect configuration for Cortex, because why do SAML for both? That would just be too easy. So I did OpenID Connect to set up Cortex. And that expects, it just sends the email address straight through. That's kind of the user ID that it uses. So this is what I had to set for the login ID. Now I expect that that's not going to be the case for a lot of you, but I'm looking for feedback. If your users that are created and or authenticated using SAML have the email address in the login ID, let me know. Drop a comment down below, shoot me an email, let me know. I really want to know. However, if the login ID is something else, like the Windows username or something like that, let me know as well, because that means that I might have to make some additional changes if you want to use OpenID Connect so that it looks up based on email address. If it does SAML, there's lots of different ways that you can say, basically provide this in the SAML response as the name and that sort of thing. So we might be able to make it work. It might be a little janky, but we might be able to make it work. But if you're using OpenID Connect, we might have to play some games. We might have to test a few things out. So anyway, let's look at what that is set up like. So if we go back to clients, we have Cortex, and it is set up as an OpenID Connect client. So Cortex, here we go. Valid redirect URIs are set up basically the same way. I tried to be a little more secure about this than I typically am with my demo sites, where I just say, anything's allowed as a redirect URI. And then, of course, there's stuff on credentials or keys. I forget which tab it is that I'm not going to show you because there's some secret keys that I needed to configure. If you're not familiar with that, link in the description to the documentation site where it talks all about how to set up authentication and installing Cortex and configuring IIS and all that good stuff. I've also got a few videos on the channel from a few weeks ago, specifically about how to install Cortex with IIS. And I'll show you what that looks like right here. So this is I know you can't tell because it's just a Keycloak login screen. Um, but this is where I get when I go to my particular Cortex instance. And this might look familiar because this is essentially the exact same screen that showed up when I was logging in with SAML in Cherwell. So similar to what I did in Cherwell, I click this login with Google button. It says, hey, what account do you want to log in with? And I pick the right one. And then it gives me an error because of course it will. It's a demo. Um, we'll just pretend that didn't happen and sign in with Google. There we go. There's a slight configuration issue with some redirects that I have to work out. But now I'm logged in. As you can see, I'm logged in as me, and I get access to all of my different business objects. I can browse, and that link doesn't work. I've got some other issues going on. That link is supposed to work, obviously, but let's just say printer problem. Uh, yeah, it's that's fun. This is actually fixed. I think I when I was setting this up originally, 1.3 wasn't released yet, so I had some like a pre-release version that had some slight bugs in it. This is all fixed in version 1.3. Um, so don't worry about that. Hand wavy. It's all just a demo that I obviously didn't test before recording the video. Sorry about that. I promise you it works. I swear. Um, yeah. So anyway, that's kind of what it's like to set up Cherwell and Cortex, both using the same database and get it with authentication. Right? It's both of them are using the same exact authentication backend. Just because one's using SAML and one's using OpenID Connect, that doesn't mean anything. They're both using Google to authenticate. They're both using the same users. It's the same account information, and obviously, I didn't have to change anything in Cherwell in the database in order for that to work. Um, so I'm really excited about that. That kind of makes the whole round trip story real. That you can have a legitimate Cherwell database that you've been using with Cherwell and not have to do any sort of hackery or trickery. Install Cortex and it just works. Um, so I'm excited to see this same story pan out on your environments as well. If you're as excited about that as I am, schedule some time with me. There's links down in the video description. If you like what we're doing here, make sure you subscribe. We still have a lot of viewers of these videos who aren't subscribed, so definitely subscribe so you get all the good updates on all the stuff we're doing over the next weeks, months, years, ideally. Um, you know, on into forever. And like, comment, share. Um, Cortex users group every Tuesday, 10 a.m. Pacific. There's links down below to get an invite to that. And I'll see you around. I look forward to seeing you in next week's video and, of course, in the users group. And I'm excited to see Cortex running on your data. Thanks for watching.